I've needed to change my mind about something. I've probably been wrong for the best part of 40 years. And the last 5 years, I've really been wound up about it. Every year, at least a few times a year, I'm confronted with something that bothered me a lot. You know I read the Bible. You know that it's important to me. Well, I haven't liked the book of Job. I confess it. The book of Job has disturbed me. And it's disturbed me for different reasons through the years. But the last 5 years or so, I've really been angry. A bit angry with God. Mostly angry with Job's friends. I didn't understand why a book was there with the bulk of the book. Well, Google decided to interrupt me, but we're going to keep going. So, back to the book of Job. I didn't understand why Job's 3 friends, or 4 friends actually, got so much press, so much time, so long to explain their point of view, which God says in the end is not right. Why does it exist that way? And it doesn't seem like any comfort at all. Let me tell you what I just discovered that's changed my mind. Let's go back to Job and the story. What I think I might have missed, because I have very little understanding of it, is that Job was the wealthiest man, the wealthiest person in his area. And then it goes on to explain the size of his business, his farm. Job was an important person financially. He was an important person as a job giver. He was an important person regionally. The book goes on to explain how he gives justice to the poor. He was influential for good. He was influential in his family. But if you look at the numbers of animals he had and crops, then you realize Job, he is taking care of many people. His decisions affect his employees. He has a lot of kids in the beginning of the story. His kids throw big feasts. Lots of people are at those feasts. His kids are probably married. And so his family's connected to lots of families. He's got lots of servants. He's propping up sectors and industries everywhere. There's a good chance that international commerce was based on his camels, clothing based on his sheep, food based on his cattle. He's got a lot of stock. His crops are feeding families. So when in one day Job suffers, the whole region suffers. When in one day Job's brought low, hundreds of people have died, maybe thousands. His servants, when they say, I'm the only one that lived to tell you this, he might as well be saying, all the others died. Well, you don't take care of 3,000 of this or 2,000 of that with 2 guys. It takes a whole crew, a big crew, and a lot of land. So this means that Job's industry, Job's farm, Job's business was covering a lot of people's lives, and they've died. The breadwinners died. All those working people died when Job got hit. That means all their wives and children, all those villages and all those homes are suffering because Job got hit. And so it's not just Job that's suffering. There's a good reason to believe that the guys that came and sat there, it's their children who got knocked down. It's their families who got smacked with Job. Everybody's suffering. Those crops that burned, they were going to feed their families. So after they sit stunned with Job, really wrestling, what are we going to do? They're looking for solutions. I got compassion on these guys for the first time in my life. I'm looking at them different because they're trying to figure out God, and they don't want to give God the blame. They're not basing their bad theology on some prosperity gospel. They're looking for a scapegoat. They're looking to say, why are we suffering? This rich man, God wouldn't have smacked him with all of this through Satan or whatever was going on if he hadn't done something wrong. We got to get to the bottom of this. We need somebody who's going to provide us a solution. We're not going to blame God, so we got to blame Job. Job, fess up so we don't all starve. Job, fess up. Even his wife. I think these people are suffering, desperately suffering. We always look at Job. Yes, Job was righteous. Yes, Job was suffering. Yes, Job is the main guy in the story. But I have judged for over 40 years Job's friends because I couldn't see. I couldn't see the bigger picture. I couldn't see the impact of what would happen if the wealthiest guy in the region suffered. A lot of us are foolish that way. A lot of us look at rulers around the world, or we look at wealthy corporations, or we look at leaders in churches, and we're quick to judge. We're quick to judge, but we don't understand the impact if one man suffers on the whole world. We don't understand that in the spiritual battle, when Satan smacks one, he smacks us all. We all get taken down. No man's an island. You might think, oh, well, Job's the man of God. So this is a story about Christians. But if you look at the story in Daniel of Nebuchadnezzar, then you see the similar thing. See, Nebuchadnezzar, God says, is like this great tree, and the birds of the air find refuge in him, and the animals find shelter under him. And when he suffered, this is a pagan king, mind you, a pagan king that's going to take down Israel, a pagan king who's going to take in captivity God's people. But God says that he's the head. And then he says, because you're going to suffer for all this pride, we're going to cut that tree down. Well, you ought to ask yourself, what happens to the birds? What happens to the animals? What happens to the people who sheltered from the sun in that? You've got to ask yourself, what is the impact of even taking down one wicked king? I think sometimes we're awfully cavalier about spiritual warfare, about Satan, about the impact of judgment, and about why people come up with the theology they come up with when faced with desperate times, when faced with fear. But we can go back to the same story, and we can learn an awful lot from Job. I think Job has tremendous patience with his friends. I think Job understands what's happened. It's not about Job. It's about God and his kingdom and the impact on the world and his glory. My prayer for you and for me today is that we get the bigger picture, that we see it from a bigger perspective, that we are not locked in to our narrow point of view, but that we learn to see things bigger than we saw them before. I confess I always read this story and I had the wrong glasses on. I hope these insights will help you. And together we'll learn. We'll learn what God's doing in this world, how He works, and that He's trustworthy, and that it may not be what we think it is. God bless you. Have a good day.